Hey, what's up YouTube? It's metal sorting day. We're pretty much going to take off the number 2 and number 1 copper, sort those out. We're going to take apart some pressure relief valves from hot water tanks, get the piece of aluminum off the outside, the copper, number 2 copper rod from the inside, and the steel spring out of it. We're going to take pieces like this, which is number 2 and number 1 together, cut it, and get the extra money for that little piece of number 1 there. Other than that, just cutting off some ends, making stuff that would be classified as number 2 into number 1, and trying to get the most money we can for what we have. So if you have any questions, please put them in the comments. I'll go over anything I can. This is the best way I found. I like this way. If you have a better way of doing it, please leave it in the comments. Let me know. I'll give your way a try, or maybe give this way a try, see if you like it more. And here we go. I'm gonna just run through some stuff. I feel this piece right here would be a whole lot of work just to try to get the extra, turning that from number 2 into number 1. So I'll leave that there. I cut almost all the way through and just bend the rest, but pretty much out of there, we got some number 2. We got a thing of number 1 here. Another number 2 in. More number 2. I cut it off there because it's solder dripped down. I don't feel like cleaning off the ends of all these pipes. Something like this, I feel that's too short to cut, and try to get some number 1 off of that. Goes to the number 2 pile. Something like that, I cut it right there, get some extra number 1. I have a refrigeration line here, I believe it is. Might be that. I'm not sure exactly what it is. But some number 1 copper. Cut the little end off, has a little brass piece on it, so I put that in the brass pile. A little fitting on it, brass. The rest of this, number 1 copper. And some more number 1 copper. And that piece I need to take the end off, turn that into number 1. Number 2, number 1. Piece of brass, a little bit of copper in it, brass file. Number 1 copper. There's PVC on the inside. The place I take it is really strict on that. They don't want to see that. And then this, so number 1 copper. Another piece of that coolant tube, I believe, number 1 copper. This is the little piece on the bottom of a hot water tank. It goes in, I believe this is the temperature probe that sticks into the machine. And then that's the piece of copper that sticks out. If instead of cutting off the end, if you just yank it out, you'll get this. And I believe that this end right here is brass. So I'll cut it off. I'll have me a nice piece of number 1 copper and a little piece of brass. Again, got a piece of PVC there, place I take it, doesn't want that. This end, it is a piece of copper, not PVC. So that's in the brass pile, and a nice heavy piece of number 1 copper here. Brass, copper fitting, brass number 1 copper. Brass, number 1. There's that wire we looked at earlier, number 1 copper. So I took the grinder to this faucet just to make sure that it's not aluminum. Made a little cut. It's yellow on the inside. That's a piece of brass. Strip this all down and turn it in with the brass. All this from a plumbing store. I went in and talked to the manager and just asked, hey, do you have a dumpster out back? And I see a couple water heaters sitting back there. Is it first come, first serve on those, or is somebody already calling those? And they said that they do not want to have the responsibility of saying it's somebody's. First come, first serve, go pick it up. There's pretty good piles starting to pile up back there, so I started picking them up and haven't seen anybody else back there. So been getting some good copper. This usually on the top of a hot water tank. Plumber just cut it off nice and clean there. For some reason they don't sort out their copper and save it and scrap it. It's just easier for them to leave it connected to the hot water tank and set it back there, and I appreciate it. So getting pieces like that. Of course, pull off the pressure relief valves. I'll show you how to tear those apart here in a minute. And sometimes the valves, they leave the piece of copper on. And then sometimes you can just find a piece of copper that's already cleaned off, number 1 copper right there. And all kinds of different valves that we get. Here's the brass valve that's near the bottom of the hot water tank. I see a lot of scrappers will leave these on. It does hold back some water, and I guess they're okay with turning that in and getting paid for the water that's in the tank. I just feel do the right thing, pull this off, and let the water drain out so that you're not getting paid for water when you're scrapping metal. If they start paying for too much of that, then the price of the actual metal itself will go down and hurt us in the long run. I love the plumbers that leave long pieces like this on top of hot water tanks. It's very nice. Thank you guys. Most hot water tanks will have this down at the bottom. It's a little piece of aluminum. I always try to snip those off, throw them aside, put those in my aluminum pile. Something like this. If you didn't see that end, number 1 copper, right there where they soldered it on, that is not number 1 copper. You need to cut that off or clean that off to be able to turn it as number 1. I choose just cut it off right there. That'll be number 2, and then this piece will be number 1. So I'm gonna go through cutting off the ends of these, and then I'll grab my bucket. I set a bucket right here, and I cut off the ends of these pressure relief valves. It's spring loaded right inside there. So if you cut it off and you don't have something to catch it, sometimes it'll fly across the room. So I just do the bucket to catch it, keep it somewhat neater. And I'll go over that here in just a minute. I forgot to pull the piece of copper off the end of that. I'll pull that off. Nice piece of number 2 right there. I think number 2 is going in the $3 range, $2.85 maybe. And then the brass is under $1, so it's definitely worth pulling that off. All these little pieces are just the ones that are on the inside of it. We cut the end off. You have to get this to come out the outside and get your piece of aluminum off and your little steel clip off the outside of it. This is what's left over on the inside of the pressure relief valve, and that's just a little brass fitting. All those go in the brass bucket. The place I take it, they accept these as number 2 copper, and if you scrape it, sometimes you have to see the copper color come out. This one's not a very good example of it, but number 2 copper. So I have another video up that I go through a bunch of these and how to do it, but I'll just go over it really quickly here. Spring on the inside, held back by this end. You need to take this little clip off, which is steel. You can punch it out, or I just take the grinder and zip that piece of brass off. That comes off. Little steel or aluminum washer comes off. This thing with the writing on it's a piece of aluminum. And then I just take the cutoff wheel and just cut right along that seam. That flies off, your spring comes out, a little piece of brass comes out, smack the end, this piece of number 2 copper comes out, and you got a piece of strip brass there. It sounds like a lot, but it's really easy, especially when you get a bunch of them, you can just start knocking them out. I'll try to go through a couple here and show you what I mean. I don't know if you could see it in that video, but the end with the spring just popped off, and then you're gonna have this piece right here, number 2 copper, piece of brass, and then falling down here is your little piece of aluminum washer. Throw that off to the side. Your spring came out, that's steel. And then you have a little piece of brass which is holding back that spring, sitting like that. So you cut that off, you got a little piece of brass, throw it in your brass pile. And it's that simple. Enjoy. So again, there's that piece that you're cutting off. That comes out. As soon as that comes out, you just take this in. You can either just hit it with a hammer, pull it out, number 2 copper. Nice piece of brass. Sometimes it just pulls right out. Or you can just hit it on the table. And it comes apart. It's the easiest method I have found. In the other video I showed that I weighed it before and after. I lost about 0.3 of an ounce of brass out of each one that I do this way. I've seen where people will take it and they'll just beat it on it with a hammer and then try to pry the edges back and everything and get everything to pull out. It's just too much work for me. I'd rather just cut it off and be done with it. So do it whichever way you feel is the best. And this is the way I do it. Number 2, brass. there's a bunch of them done. Now we just come through here, knock out your number 2 copper, throw that in the copper pile. Got your brass pile. Go through all of this, pick out your steel, pick out your aluminum, and separate your brass and copper, and then go get paid.